Ms. Breslin would like to answer this question, but my understanding is that within the organizational chart, there is a position being asked for our marketing manager. I have a question about that because about a year or so ago, we let a few folks go from communications, but now we're bringing people back, so I'm confused as to what's going on with that position, because it seemed like we were streamlining a year ago, but now we're not. So I'd like to get some context around that.
This position is very different than the positions that were eliminated from that department a year ago. This position, and if you look at the performance responsibilities, is specific to marketing. So they're going to be working very closely with the people already in the department, and obviously with Allison and her team, but working with digital media, working with the other departments also. But what we often say is that we do not have, oh yeah, that's the very first one there. Assist communications and college and career readiness in the development and implementation of JCPS brand strategy and career talent academies. But also is working within the digital marketing and research. So it's not at all the positions that were in the department before.
Okay, it just seems that there's some folks that were in those positions that certainly have done elements of that. So that's how come my
no,
question.
and I can assure you, I mean,
okay,
my role as HR director, we certainly have to
okay.
pay very close attention to that.
So the other question I have in regards to these positions, and actually we'll kind of come to directly at academic services. I don't doubt that some of these changes need to happen, and I certainly understand that there is a time sensitivity to some of these, so I get that totally. Mine's more of a practical question in the fact that we're in the process of not having a CAO, and we're in the process of having a new superintendent here in the near future, possibly an interim, hopefully an interim, so that's our plan. Definitely an interim, sorry. So we're still in that process. I don't want to give any false doubt out there, that's just my word usage. But my concern is that we have a number of folks that are actually being realigned to report directly to the CAO. Without a CAO, then all that goes directly to the superintendent. Superintendent generally has a whole lot on their plate. An interim superintendent who's being brought in to learn the district has even more on their plate. And even though there might be someone who might be a part of the district or had previous experience within our district, there's still going to be quite a bit of learning that has to go on with that. My concern is that because of the structure that's happening and just the timing of it, not necessarily the structure that's being placed in, that's being recommended here, it's more of a question of timing. I have a concern about there being, one, a lot of folks that don't have any direct supervision. And two, I have a big concern about whoever the interim might be, unless they were to get in fairly short order, an interim CAO, which is what I suggest, or at least what I suspect would happen. Then, but that's a decision by the interim that none of us can make, right? So that leads a possibility of there being a whole lot going on here that no one is really in control of. So that's my biggest concern about that. You seem to have already thought of this. I'm sure this question's already been brought to you by existing staff or current staff. My question to you is, what's your response to that? Anyone?
Let me give it a try, okay? The changes don't take effect until July 1st. So the most important thing is to get those vacant positions filled. So that gives us an opportunity to post the CAO position. I think, Mr. Brady, you're right, for an interim superintendent to possibly look at an interim CAO. In the worst case scenario, we get close to July 1st and there isn't an interim CAO, right? You can temporarily, everyone has to have a supervisor. You can temporarily assign a supervisor until all that's worked out. So what Dr. Herring is proposing is structurally very strong to have oversight and coherence about the different pieces that have to work in academic services. So those other things could be worked out. So, but we have talked about everything's a domino effect, but it doesn't go in effect to July 1st. So, but like I said, worst case scenario, that people would be, I agree, the interim superintendent can not have that many direct reports. They would have to be reassigned to other staff members if there's not an interim CAO. But we've talked about that. We're starting a school year. It makes sense to put an interim CAO in there. But again, an interim superintendent would decide that ultimately.
Okay, so that leads to another question right now that I haven't had a clear answer on. So Dr. Herring, I apologize, I'm putting you on the spot, but when is your last day with us at JCPS?
We have not identified that day just yet.
Okay.
But it will be my goal to identify that for you before the end of this week, Chair Brady. But
Okay.
I'm speaking to you honestly. We haven't identified that day yet.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out at what point, when this, at what point we're going to be without this to be able to get this type of a line. So I'm
Sure.
trying to get an idea of what that process is going to be.
And in response to your statement, which I don't have, everything you said was correct. So I understand that. As it relates to other matters tied to me, I think that would be a conversation that I would entertain absent of the mic, but I don't have the date for you today.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
In administrator recruitment and development, we have a list of strong retired administrators, recent assistant superintendents. I think that we could have conversations with who would be strong candidates for interim chief academic officer as well.
Okay.
So we have had those conversations.
All right. So, I think to what Member Horn had talked about earlier, there's a whole lot. The devil's in the details. I had concerns coming into this that, I had concerns at first about the entire process of, making changes so close to the end. I'd heard through the grapevine that this was coming. I didn't know what form this was actually going to take place. When this first came before me, my first gut reaction was, okay, there's time, there's a whole lot of changes. I want the board to be able to take more time with this. That's why I said I was trying to put this off, 2 more weeks. As we've all discovered tonight, there are certain things that have to happen by a particular deadline. I found it a bit disconcerting that things were grouped together and all came to us at once. So that's something I would prefer that not happen in the future. But for me, sitting here, listening to all the concerns that were expressed by my fellow colleagues and your all's answer to them, I understand the urgency of this. So I commend you guys on at least selling me on that. Structurally, I have concerns, but those are structural concerns. That's not concerns with what the recommendation is. So those are 2 separate things. I don't want those things to get conflated. So that being said, I think that I understand everything that's been done here. So at this point, I know that that kind of concludes my questions. I've gotten answers to that. So to my colleagues, I know that there were a couple of follow-up questions. Did anybody have any other concerns that they want to express at this time?
I have a question.
Member Porter.
Because of the number of organizational charts that we're being asked to vote on, are we making one vote is all or none, or can we vote some of these separately? Because there have been some specific questions about some of them. So what is the process?
The process is whatever board members make a motion to do. Now, the question then becomes actually one of order. At this point on the agenda, we have job descriptions first, which is item 7A, and 7B is organizational chart approval. So we could, so we could approve the job descriptions, but I don't know if those job descriptions really go anywhere without actually approving the chart or the organizational chart. So my initial thought is that the organizational chart needs to be approved before the job descriptions are approved. That's my guess. Hang on. So but the other thing is that regarding if you're looking at doing one department or one section or even getting down into the nitty-gritty of each individual job, board members can make those recommendations and make those motions for anything. There's nothing in here that says this is all or nothing. I personally think coming into this that I had a question as to, maybe we can section some things out. But as I said, listening to everyone's explanation of this, and seeing that there are certain efficiencies to be had. There are certain things that are certainly going to impact the first day of school. There are certain deadlines that we need to act on. I've been kind of sold on all that. So before I turn it over to you, Member Horn had a question, or do you have a continuation of your question, Member Porter? Did you have a continuation of your question?
I guess more detail is needed for some of these particular jobs, because for certified positions, they post for 30 days. If I'm posting for a clerk position, how many days do they have to post?
We typically post for 1 to 2 weeks.
Okay, and for these new job titles for housekeeping, how long do they have to post?
Usually for administrative level or mid-level management, it's going to be about 2 weeks, but it can be a week.
Okay, so the critical positions are the certified positions because they have to post for 30 days. Am I
That's
correct?
correct.
How many days before school opens?
98.
How many?
98. The one thing that I would say, though, is there will probably be rolling domino effects with every job description tonight that has been proposed. So even though it'll be a 2 week or a 1 week, then it'll be a 2 week or a 1 week, then it'll be a 2 week or a 1 week.
I think there are questions about all or nothing, and I think that we've had enough questions that there may be a request from some board members to vote some things independently, and if it's not voted tonight, it could perhaps be voted at the next board meeting, which is in 2 weeks. My concern is academic performance for the students. My other issue that I've discussed previously is that we have waited for the academic performance, and even you, Dr. Razor, said that you've had your materials together for some time. But time is of the essence with the 98 days for school to open. And we've cleared up the fact that in the event that when we are making replacements of staff, that there would be people in charge that would be in charge for folks to report to. I guess it makes me a little anxious with 98 days before school to open if we are thoroughly committed to deeper learning, academic progress, to put that on hold when time has been spent to develop the plan, the charts, and all of that, to not move on that. Again, you know, I'm going to use this word that I heard on TV Sunday night, courageous. We have to be courageous if we are concerned about opening school at a level to present information to our students, to our parents. It doesn't matter who is in the box. My customer are the students and the staff of the Jefferson County Public Schools. And I mean, I cannot say that enough, that who our customer is. The work goes on. And we have 98 days before school starts. Thank you.
All right, Member Horn, then Member Cole, then Vice Chair Wellner.
I would just suggest that if somebody wants to pull out, like I want to pull out, for example, the PM1 property management org chart, and I would say in the corresponding job descriptions. So that is how I will pull it out. That would be a suggestion.
You
And
would need
so,
to make a motion.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so I'll go ahead and make a motion to pull out and put on hold the PM1 property management org chart and corresponding job descriptions.
When you say put on hold, do you mean table to the next meeting, or do you want, or an indefinite hold, or
Just
can you
to-
be, can you provide clarity?
indefinitely, you know what I mean, not vote today on that, to pull
So,
it, to pull it.
So an indefinite hold. Is there a second? Se- There's a second, second by Member Duncan. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails. Abstain? Okay, one abstention. Member Cole.
I think we need to let our staff get on with their work. 98 days, I think, sounds like a long time, but when you're planning for 150 schools on 100,000 kids, it's really not that much time. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt both action items as presented, action items A and B, recommendation for approval of job descriptions and recommendation for approval of organizational charts.
Second made by Vice Chair Wilner. All those in favor?
Is there a question?
Well, we can have time for discussion, so you're correct. Member Porter.
So my question is, if we wanted to pull down, for example, the clerk position in the business office can we pull that down and vote on that separately? I don't see the sense of urgency for that
That would be a
job.
motion that you can make.
So do I make that,
You'd make it now.
okay, I would like to make the motion that the clerk position for the chief business officer position be pulled down and come back to the board potentially in 2 weeks, but to not vote on that tonight because I'm not clear on the sense of urgency. I've requested additional information that would give us time to get that additional information, so I'm requesting that we not vote on that particular position tonight.
All right, just for clarification, so I can shorten that, your motion is to pull down the clerk position for the CBO to be voted upon at our next meeting.
Correct, and that would,
Okay.
that also is impacted by an org chart. There's an org chart on there for that
Right,
as
the
well.
org chart and the job
That's
description.
correct.
All right, is there a second? Second made by Member Duncan. All those in favor? Okay, we'll move that. So
Is that an amendment? to
that was an
the-
amendment to, yes, that was an amendment, so I should say a motion to amend, but I'm not going to stand on all that. So functionally, we understand what's going on.
So my motion's been
Your
moved
motion-
and seconded,
Your motion has been moved and seconded, it's been amended,
amended.
and now your motion still stands. So now we're going to, if there's no other further discussion, we're going to move to a vote for the amended motion that has already been motioned and seconded. So unless there's any further discussion. Okay, so call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting the org chart changes and the job descriptions minus the clerk position under the CBO's office and which has been pulled for further consideration for our next meeting. All those in favor? All opposed? All right, it's 6-1, motion passes. All right, so at this time, we are going to move on from our action items. That concludes our action items, so thank you very much. And yeah, I know that was a lot of discussion. This is why it was not part of the consent calendar. So moving on, we're going to move to informational items. I'll state that I'm going to do one more, we'll go to our next item, which is going to be item 8A. And depending on when this ends, I might ask for a break after this next session. I'm trying to get us, I know we lose signal at 9:30, so I want to be able to try and get those that are listening at home a full meeting. And then once that happens, then I'll probably end up asking for a short break for everyone to kind of stretch and use the facilities if needed. So at this time, I'm going to move the item, informational items, which is item 8, and we're going to start with item 8A, which is an update to Vision 2020 goal communications indicators on issue resolution and response time. Member Dr. Hargens, would you like to introduce this?
We'll give it right over to Dr. Razor. It's an
Thank you.
update.
Good evening again. Although this falls under communication, what we're going to talk about tonight is responsiveness. Some of it is very specific because it's mentioned specifically in the strategic plan. The call center, a single ticketing system, but also part of responsiveness is strategic alignment and process improvement. What we're talking about here again is coherent systems. We're talking about making sure that we don't have systems that are fighting themselves. So, information that you've seen before, but I do want to give you updates on, and I will be very brief given the time. The call center we established in August with about 30 days lead time. The thing about the call center that I want to talk about is this idea of the minimum viable product, the MVP approach. This is an approach that's used by lots of startups. It's how Uber started. Basically, what's the purpose of what you want to accomplish? And what is the minimum resources, minimum manpower you need to get that off the ground? And given the time frame as well as the resources we had at our disposal, we said, what do we need for the call center? We need phones, we need computers, we need desks, and we need a room. So that's how we formed it, and we've let it work like a startup. It looks probably like a lot of startups did, but it's achieving its goal. Right now we're averaging about 500 calls a day, and as we showed you when we gave the presentation on it, there are periods of time in the fall during open enrollment when calls about benefits spike. At the beginning of the year, it was calls about buses. And then throughout the spring, calls about student assignment and student placement. But we have achieved our goal of a single number for JCPS calls to be routed through, and then tying directly in to our single ticketing system. We're able to track those calls and what they're about. Right now, we are scaling our ticketing system, and I know you're not going to be able to see very much of this, but I just wanted to give you more of an idea of what my people can see. There's not specific information on these next few slides that are important to you. But basically, we're able to catalog everything. And we're able now to start deriving analytics from this so we can continue to be more responsive. So here's what you can see from one of our IT teams. This is just a snapshot in time. The average hours to reserve a ticket or to resolve a ticket. Now those may look like some long hour times, but the team that you're looking at here for the most part is our development team. So these are developing software programs. These are providing bridges between two different software programs. But then the other thing that we're able to do is you're able to drive deep down in, and you're able to see what people in IT are best at what tasks. So we're able to align human capital with the tasks that they're best at. So if it only takes somebody 40 hours to develop a product, where another person in IT, it might take 80, you put the person on that task who it only takes 40 hours and put the other person in their strong suit. And finally, the one thing also that we get too is we get feedback. This is how we're doing. Every time a ticket is completed in Landesk, there's random generation of a survey that goes out where the service provided is given a 1 to 5 ranking. So you can see how you're doing, how your customer feels like you're doing. Are we being more responsive to our customers? So, as I said, right now, this is in the call center, this is in IT. We are poised to roll this out eventually across all departments. So then, too, similar to Louisville Metro's 311 system, when you call in, you'll be given a ticket number, and then you can track back and see what the resolution of your ticket is as an internal customer. And if someone were to call 313 HELP and say, hey, I called about a bus issue, 313 HELP would be able to pull that up and reference it and help out that constituent in a much more knowledgeable way. This slide and the next few slides really have to do with the systems culture that we're creating. We reorganized the maintenance department and really what was called the old facilities department in the fall of 2015. And in December 2015, a new director was hired, Rob Tanner, transferred into a position here. And our goal was to be customer responsive. When that team was taken over and the reorganization happened, we had over 1,000 work orders in maintenance over 90 days old. Last week there were 9. That is phenomenal. The way that was accomplished, though, isn't phenomenal. The way it was accomplished was by being intentional. Where does our customer feel the pain the most? And it's they're waiting on something. So we had that kind of intentionality to concentrate on them. By the end of the summer, I predict 90-day work orders will go away, and 60-day work orders are down under 100 now. So our goal will be, with the preventative maintenance crews, to have work orders at a 30-day turnaround. And that still sounds like a long time, but when you think some of these work orders are remove the tree or build a fence, or things that take planning prior to doing them, it is really phenomenal. We've cut our mowing cycle almost in half. And again, we did this by being intentional. One of the things that we had done in the past is we hire lots of temporary help in the summer to mow. I mean, we have 150 plus sites. That takes a lot of time to get around to. Well, in the past, our alignment was not strategic. We would send temporary crews out. And as I referenced earlier, some of the ills of outsourcing is, first of all, they don't have any pride in necessarily doing that work. But there wasn't a whole lot of oversight by us. So what we did was we aligned where we had one member of our staff be the foreman for every temporary crew. The other thing we did too is we created mow zones, slow mow zones, and no mow zones. The areas around buildings get mowed very frequently. A big field out behind the building that no one's using over the summer gets mowed every other time. And then we've identified places on our property that we never should have been mowing in the first place, that along with a partnership with Trees Louisville, we're turning into urban reforestation zones on our campuses. And the tree canopy in Louisville, I know this isn't a talk about that, but it's an unbelievable way to aid in that. In-house warranty work. We also reorganized the IT department to be more responsive last year and made all of our techs, whether they were an electronic maintenance tech, a copy machine tech, or an IT tech, one universal field tech. And that allowed us for cross-training and additional training of our staff. One of the benefits of that is now for several of our providers, we have been certified to do in-house warranty work. So what took 3 to 5 weeks to get technology back in the hands of kids is now only taking 3 to 5 days on average. So there's direct responsiveness to our customers, the school and the student. We also, because of this increased capacity of all the techs being cross-trained, we were able to, again, something we'd stopped doing, I think, 10, 20 years ago, we do in-house data wiring for our schools now. So if schools need a data drop in a classroom or in an office, they can get that within 3 to 5 days now, where again, it was 3 to 5 weeks. An unintended positive consequence of this work are A, it's about half the cost to the schools, and B, the money can simply be transferred from one account to another account when the work is done, instead of our purchasing department having to create purchase orders and paper trails to use outside vendors. This one doesn't sound sexy at all. But in March, we started recycling our technology in a different way. With the new privacy laws, we were shredding every hard drive of our surplus technology. That was a laborious process, but it had to be done. We identified a vendor, and then through a quoting process, now have a vendor that will pay us for our recycled technology, and we make more on what they pay us for the recycling than we did at auction, almost 4 or 5 times more per computer. As an added benefit of this, because of the profit we're making, we're also able to take the old square cube televisions, which are now obsolete, off of schools' hands. We have thousands of those across the district, and it was costing us substantial amounts of money. We had to ask for a budget request this year to get them out of schools, because schools don't want them there anymore. They have no use for them. So again, we got more money, we're getting rid of obsolete inventory, it's much faster disposal. TVs now don't cost us anything, but again, importantly, because of responsiveness, techs aren't shredding hard drives now, they're out fixing technology for schools. I'm really proud of my team with this. In the last 3 years, we've increased the number of students eating lunch in our cafeterias by over 7,000 kids. Breakfast has increased by almost 6,000 kids. I mean, that's a direct impact on our families. And along with this too, with responsiveness, one of the things tonight also coming up is our ability to expand free lunch in more buildings for every kid as well as eliminating the reduced price lunches whatsoever. And then again, around systems thinking, we've had a real process improvement focus in operations, and my team has done a really good job of taking that out to the departments they oversee. I think all of you would agree. You see all the graphics, the things the backdrop there, the sign behind you, the sign out front. Materials production does fantastic work. This year, they doubled almost the amount of jobs they did. Because of looking at the process they followed, because of looking what their core business was, we were able to print all of the district-wide assessments all year long for all of the schools. Because of that, our schools didn't get sent a file and say, print this, and for days on end in some cases, the school copy machine, which I know you've all heard about, the school copy machine is sitting there just chunking out thousands of pages of paper. We have industrial machines. They can do this work in days for the entire district. So we've been able to do that as well. Those are just a few of the highlights, but what I want to talk about more than the what is the how. How have we been able to do that? The first thing is we've built relationships and trust within our department. And because we have it within our department, we've had schools and other departments that learn that they can trust us. There's been real systemic thinking, and that systemic thinking has been around what's our purpose? That clarity of purpose, why are we existing? Something that my team has really embraced as well around this responsiveness is an idea of simplification. Do less better. What are you here to do? Let's focus on doing that. Do less better. Have a continuous improvement, innovation culture mindset. We've also practiced lean management. If you remember back, many of the reorganizations that we have proposed within operations have created a really lean management structure and a lot of direct touch between supervisor and boots on the ground employee, where there's a real understanding of what's going on, a flattening of the organization. We've also created autonomy up and down the organization. Steve Jobs has a quote that I love, and it says, basically, it doesn't make sense to hire smart people what to do. We hire smart people, and then they tell us what to do. We've done in operations. And because of that, we have gotten a culture of high expectations. We've got a group of people who are willing to start these MVP projects, as well as pivot on something if it's not working. We've gotten that stakeholder involvement. And then finally, I think what you've been able to see too is the way that you can leverage technology at a district systemic level to impact both internal and external responsiveness. And then finally, what we've really tried to embrace is that smarter, not harder. Let's be productive, not just active. And that's taken time. That's taken about 5 years to get even people within my own team to well, no, you're not too busy, you're working too hard. Any questions?
Colleagues, any questions regarding this presentation? No? Okay. Well, I was just going to say for myself, Member Horn and I were, as you know, we've talked about it before, chairing the infrastructure improvement side of our Vision 2020 strategic plan, which is that third section that's in green in the back. And a lot of that had to deal with switching over to a customer service mindset and also putting in some of these metrics. One of the things I was concerned about on the front end was that we had this 313 help system, which is awesome that we got it going, but we didn't have a ticketing system for it, because I know that's one of the things that helps with MetroCall. I was a little concerned about that because I thought, I always want to start everything right out. So we eased into it, and now we're going to be applying what we already have of Landex into 313 help. So I think that's going to be a really big win for our community because I know that one of the complaints that we had prior to implementing 313 help is that no one ever got back with me, and that's because there were 37 points of entry and you get 37 different answers, and there was really no way of necessarily defined way of having someone track something and call you back. This will give us the infrastructure to be able to do that. This is a process. It takes time. So I want to commend our ops staff for being able to do all that. I think that we're going to be, especially some of our data nerds here, will certainly appreciate being able to see the analytics that come from that. And so we look forward to it. And one of the things that I would appreciate is getting more of a better handle on knowing the season for certain things. Right? So, okay, we know we're going to get more calls to BuzzFinder at the beginning of the year. We know as board members, we're going to get constituents talking to us about student assignment in March, because that's when those notifications come out. Those things we already know, but how can we better prepare for that? And so it's a smoother transition for everyone. So thank you. With that, we're done with our first information item, and we have lost our cable feed, which tells me that it's time for a break. So what I'd like to do is take a recess for about 10 minutes. Everyone has a chance to stretch, use the restroom if you need to. So what we're going to do is we're going to be in recess until 9:45. That gives us 11 minutes.